The most listened to liberal talker in America is back. Here's Ed Schultz.
Tonight on the Ed Show on MSNBC, 8 o'clock Eastern, I will step aside as Brian Williams will be hosting Rock Center on MSNBC, and it will be a rerun of the program that played on the NBC television network last night about the raid on Bin Laden. It is a fabulous piece of work. It will air tonight on MSNBC in my hour in case you missed it last night. One of the people in the room when the raid was taking place was the then Undersecretary of Defense for Policy in the Obama administration, Michele Fluornoy, and she joins us now on the Ed Schultz radio show. Michele, nice to have you with us.
Hello, Ed. So nice to be with you.
You bet. How many people were in the Situation Room when this raid was taking place?
I would say probably 20 or fewer. 20 or fewer.
And you watched it all unfold?
Yes, we did. I think we were all on pins and needles, lots of people holding their breath, particularly at rather scary moments like when the first helicopter went down. But we were getting regular updates from the field, through Admiral McCraven, and you know, we're a huge sigh of relief once it was confirmed that we believed it was in fact Osama Bin Laden, and our forces had cleared the international border and were heading back into Afghanistan.
What kind of technology was used? I mean, could you actually see the helicopters go down? Was it? I mean, were you watching the raid? Give us a sense of if we had been in there in the room, what would we have seen?
There was surveillance on the site, so we could see the helicopters coming in, the forces coming out, assaulting the compound, and et cetera. We had both updates from the field coming in electronically, and then Admiral McCraven was sort of narrating what's going on as well in between, you know, being in touch with the forces. And so people had a pretty good sense of what was going on, but there were long periods where the forces were inside the compound and we had to wait for updates. And those were the hard ones.
How long was that?
There were several minutes at a time when we knew they were doing their job inside, and we just weren't going to know exactly how it was going to come out until they were able to come out.
How was the communication given that Bin Laden had been killed?
They had a code name for him, Geronimo, and at one point Admiral McCraven said Geronimo KIA, which means killed in action. And then, of course, there was further effort to confirm that in terms of verifying his physical appearance, verifying through DNA testing and so forth that it was in fact Osama bin Laden.
And that was done on the scene?
That was begun on the scene, but it wasn't completed until just after.
Okay. You were the highest-ranking woman ever to serve in the Pentagon. Do I have that correct?
That is correct.
What? When did you find out that this raid was taking place? I mean, Brian Williams' special talked about the secrecy. Holding secrets in Washington's not an easy thing to do. When did you find out, holy smokes, we're going in for Bin Laden?
Well, several months beforehand, there was a small group brought together to review the intelligence. There was a lot of intelligence, but all of it was circumstantial. None of it was direct, confirming intelligence that this was, in fact, for sure Osama bin Laden. It was all evidence that could only be explained, seemingly, if it were him. And so a small group was brought together to review the intelligence, to brief our principals and the president, and then to try to refine that intelligence to get a better case, and then to begin the military planning for the actual operations. And there were multiple options considered, not only the raid, but a bombing approach, the use of drones. There were several options considered, and what really impressed me about the president's leadership in this whole episode was that he was getting different recommendations from his senior-most advisors, from the vice president to the Secretary of Defense to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and ultimately he had to make the judgment call. And I think he made a courageous decision, and one that will have seriously positive and long-lasting impacts for our national security.
When the word came that Geronimo KIA, what happened in the room?
I think everybody stopped holding their breath. There was and I think just just huge relief and gratefulness for the incredible work of the intelligence professionals and the SEALs on the ground to pull this off under those conditions.
Was the president getting strong advice not to do this?
He got strong advice to take more time. There was a tough call. Do you take more time and risk the fact that somehow it might leak and Bin Laden would be tipped off and therefore go underground and we'd lose him? Or do you go now knowing that there are real risks involved with the raid, real risks in terms of the intelligence not being absolutely airtight that it's him, real risks with regard to the relationship with Pakistan and so forth. And I think at the end of the day, the president made the tough call, and I think it's had a tremendous impact not only here in the United States, but also in terms of the movement of al-Qaeda globally.
Now, the night before, it was the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Was the raid taking place and then the next day is when the president announced that Osama bin Laden had been killed?
Yeah.
When was the go-ahead given, or what was happening during that Saturday evening at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which the president attended and was absolutely a hit? That's never really been explained exactly when the order was given, when he knew he was going to do it, or had the raid already taken place?
No, I think everything was prepared. I think the president felt it wasn't appropriate to have the raid happening when he was not in the White House and focused on that. And so I think everything was ready to go and as ready as it could be, but he did not actually give the go until after the dinner, until I believe it was early Sunday morning.
So he went to bed Saturday night, got up and said, "Let's go."
Pretty much. And again, everything had been set, and there was a window of time in terms of illumination from the moon and all of that sort of made it more favorable to go in a certain window of time. And he, at some point in that window, made the decision. And then the raid went forward on the Sunday. So
you had it down to the moonlight.
Well, that's a very important factor for special operations forces when they're having to worry about going in undetected. All those little details matter.
This is the Ed Schultz Radio Show. I'm visiting with Michele Fluornoy, who is the former Undersecretary of Defense for Policy in the Obama administration. She was in the Situation Room during the raid on Osama bin Laden. The famous picture that's being shown, are you in that picture?
Happily, I am not.
Okay. All right, so you were probably off to the side a little bit, but you were.
Yes.
All right, the point of conversation with many Americans is the reaction that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is having when she has her hand over her face. What was it? Does anybody know what was happening then?
I think that was the moment at which the first helicopter went down. And I think if you look at Secretary Gates' face as well, he was just ashen in that moment, and remembering from years earlier the failed Iranian hostage rescue, where things started to go bad with a helicopter going down. Again, what was so brilliant about the way the president led this planning process is that he really pushed us all to have backup plans and backup plans to backup plans, so that if there was a helicopter that got in trouble, that wouldn't compromise the mission. And so there were many, many contingency plans in place for just about every foreseeable circumstance.
Pretty amazing stuff. Tough call, wasn't it? A real piece of history.
It was a real piece of history, and one that we should all be proud of.
I have to ask you, was there any high-fiving? I mean, okay, we got him.
I don't think there was.
The choppers are on their way back. My God, we got this thing done. Wasn't there any?
I think there was tremendous sense of relief and a sense of the enormity of it, but it's pretty serious business and pretty grave. The thing I think that really hit all of us is when we came out of the Situation Room very late that night after the president had spoken on national television. We were all surprised to hear that singing. Several hundred Americans had spontaneously gathered in Lafayette Square across from the White House, and they were singing the national anthem. And I think that just blew everyone away. It was an incredible moment of national unity, and I think a healing moment and a bookend, if you will, to the 9/11.
So you were in the Situation Room, and people were still in the Situation Room when the president stepped out of the East Wing and gave the news to the world. That
Yes. At that point, we had been working the phones, notifying foreign leaders, notifying members of Congress before his speech, and then that work continued with many others after he spoke.
Just amazing. I mean, were there any tears of emotion?
Absolutely. I think it was very, a lot had gone into this, obviously, and we all expected that on top of, tremendous pressure that had already been placed on Al-Qaeda, that this would have, was a very important victory in the longer fight against Al-Qaeda.
Fascinating. I could keep going for hours. Michele Fluornoy, thank you for joining us here on the Ed Schultz Radio
Thank
Show.
you.
It is a piece of history, and it's a pretty remarkable thing that's happened in your lifetime to be a part of that.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Former Undersecretary of Defense for Policy in the Obama administration. She was in the room.